evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Reference Point. I'm your host, Dave Cokerhook. And this is the second segment of our conversation about childhood education, moving in a direction to try to help the youth here in the United States, and from what I'm understanding, probably more than just in the United States, to be able to achieve more through their lives. And with me again, Sumant Pendharker, who is the founder of K12 Counts. Sumant, thank you for being here again.
Thank you, Dave.
And we have another guest with us who's joining us via Skype, and this is Cynthia Karina León, who is the project coordinator for California School-Based Health Alliance. Cynthia, hi there.
Hi, Dave. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here, and thanks for joining us via Skype. That's really cool. I love when technology works.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've been talking, Sumant, about the book, and just to kind of review, so in case someone is tuning into the show and didn't see the first one, 14 years ago you wrote a book that was targeted toward the, what did you say?
About 10 to 14 age group.
10 to 14 age group. And it turned out that the information in this book and the meat of the book rang true for older children and actually many adults, the parents of the kids who you were targeting. And so this led you to a realization that there was something else going on that might need a little bit more attention. And so we now have a foundation called K12 Counts with a mission to try to do a couple things. I'm going to read this because this was really cool. You've got a plan or an intention. It's called 85 and 25. So the first thing I want to talk about is what that means, because I think Cynthia will find this be right in her wheelhouse too.
So I'll bring the graduation rate up right up to 85%. Right now, nationwide, it is somewhere around 81%.
Okay.
And our target is to catch the students who would probably be amongst the first in their families to graduate and graduate high school.
Graduate high school,
and then get them ready for being either college ready or career ready. But first and foremost, the first goals are to get them to graduate high school.
Get them to graduate high school. So by 2025, you want to get that number from 81% average up to 85% across the country.
Across the country,
which is
yes.
Huge, because we were looking at a graphic earlier that showed quite a disparity between states, and some states have a really high graduation rate and others are not so much. So there's a lot of work to do here.
That's correct.
So Cynthia, you mentioned earlier that you went to UC Berkeley, right?
Yes, I did.
So when you started at Berkeley, I'm curious, one of the things that we had talked about here was the fact that there were a number of people who, when they were trying to get into the whatever college they were going to try to get into, were confronted with the fact that they did not have their basics, their foundational stuff that they should have learned in high school, to the point where they were actually able to get in to college and be able to be effective there. Did you see that at all amongst the when you were there at the school? Was that something that some of the kids, even at a school like Berkeley, were confronted with?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's a very large public university, so you have people spread across a wide spectrum of being prepared. So there are those students who are extremely well prepared. People who went to high school in the Silicon Valley particularly, I found, were very well prepared for college. And then there were students from other schools, I would probably include myself, that were not as well prepared. The high school that I went to actually had a worse graduation rate than the national average. And
wow.
At my school, it was only 3 out of 4 students graduated from high school.
Wow. Tell us about that in terms of what was it within the context of the school? Was it, what did you see as some of the contributing factors that may have led to that only 3 out of 4 graduates?
Well, it was a very big school. My freshman class started out with 1,200 students, actually. So out of those 1,200, by the time we graduated in 2008, there were only a little over 800 students. And I think that what contributed to that is a lot of what Sumant spoke about earlier, is falling behind very early. And, we touched upon that very critical point between the ages of 10 to 13 or 14, where students might become very discouraged about their prospects of going to college, and give up and don't even finish high school. So I would say that not having a good foundation, starting in elementary school and in middle school is definitely right up there. Probably another close second would be students who have English as a second language,
Sure.
who are naturally predisposed to falling behind. If you just think if you have two children starting off in preschool and one has to learn English and the other one already knows that language, you can see how that definitely puts one student way behind.
Right. So Sumant, what Cynthia is talking about here speaks directly to some of the things that you and I have discussed. So let's dig back into K12 Counts and look at, you got a vision statement here, to break the cycle of low academic outcomes permanently in a single generation and to improve attainment rates so that the average and median converge and future performance is inherited. Talk a little bit about what that vision statement really means and how we think that we might be able to accomplish that.
So let's talk with what Cynthia just said. The school that she was in, if there are 1,200 students and the teachers have to help everybody, they're not going to be able to do that. There are way too many students compared to what the teachers can handle.
Right.
And when you have the student, one student who is proficient already in English and one who is not proficient in English, the other student is already behind.
Right.
And so at this point in time, either the teachers need to step in, the parents need to step in, there should be some tutor program, there should be some help for that student to get caught up.
Right.
And if that is not caught in the first 3 or 4 years of schooling, there's also something known as tracking. That student gets moved into another, say, class. And so now this person's career track goes on a completely different tangent.
Right.
So with this kind of a vision, what we have for K12 Counts, we will have a parent coach. The parent coach will be watching over the grades, and we will have our own evaluation to ensure that the student is staying at par, at the very minimum at par for that grade level.
Okay.
And if it means that studying extra after school hours or during whatever spring break or summer holidays, then so be it.
Another thing you had mentioned about this, and Cynthia, you can chime in on this too, I think your perspective might be useful. But one of the things you mentioned, Sumant, was that the objective here in bringing the parent mentors in to coaches was that they should have a child in the same school system that's a couple of years ahead of the child that they're going to be a coach for. Is that correct?
Absolutely right.
So talk about that for a moment.
So the basic model would be that the parent coach would at least have a college degree. That's absolutely expected. Also, the parent coach will have had a child or have a child 1 or 2 years senior to the students that they will be coaching.
Okay.
And so then they've already gone through the system. And that will help them be better parent coaches, and they're not learning on the job, as they say.
Got
I
it.
mean, as much devoted as they will be for their own child, the fact that they've already learned that will help them be a more effective parent coach.
So what are your thoughts regarding that, Cynthia? What do you think something like that in the environment that you were in and your 1,200 student friends were in, that something like that could have been a positive factor?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say it was actually 1,200 students in the freshman class.
In the freshman class?
Freshman class.
Okay.
Wow.
So the entire school was actually a lot bigger.
Okay.
And, you know, I can definitely speak to my experience during undergrad, having other students, 2 or 3 years older, kind of talk about, take this class, don't take that class, go here for resources. And I can't emphasize how important having someone like that, a mentor sort of figure. So I think that having this parent mentoring system would be very successful.
Very cool.
Actually, I want to add something else too. It'll be a school year contract for the parent coach. So there's continuity between the parent coach, the parent, and the students. So there is no break in that one day you're handed off to somebody else who has a different approach and who's not that maybe focused at that point of time in their life with helping out. So there's accountability here, and the parent coaches will be paid. So there is no more of that thing that, oh, gee, I'm a volunteer, so I'm not in the mood today, or I have to go for the movies,
Right.
and so goodbye. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
And that's the unfortunate part, that there's so many organizations trying to help the students be mentors, and anything is better than nothing.
Right.
No doubt about it. But you have to have consistency. And that is our single most important thing that we can offer from K12 Counts as a parent coach, is to have that continuity for a whole school year. And if not, maybe more school years, as the child grows for this particular parent coach, somebody else is following from behind.
Right.
And then the handoff is that much easier. So perhaps that would actually help somebody, Cynthia's peers.
Right.
Or, well, not for her anymore, but
Very interesting. So Cynthia, in the school that you went to, obviously it was a very large school. Was it here in Northern California? I don't need you to name the school. I'm just curious.
No, it was in Southern LA County.
Southern LA County. Okay.
Yes.
So was it the demographics, was the demographic pretty broad?
It was a very diverse school, yes.
And how did that play into, in any way, or did it play in any way, into that portion of the freshman class that didn't manage to get all the way through? Was there any apparent demographic tie-in?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, it was a very diverse student population, and I can say hands down that students who were white and middle class had much higher graduation rates than other populations like Latino, African American, and even Asian Americans at that school.
So why would that be?
I mean, it's everything that Sumant has mentioned already. It's just when you have, it's a lot of things. When you have parents who went through the school system in the United States, they know the ropes, they know what is required, they have an understanding of what A through G requirements are, they know what the SAT is, they can encourage their children to focus on those things. Whereas if you have, parents who maybe they did grow up in this country, but they themselves didn't graduate from high school either, or they themselves didn't pursue a post-high school education, then how can you encourage your kids to study for the SAT if you don't know what the SAT is? I was really fortunate to have parents who, although they were immigrants, they just had it, completely in their brain that education is the only way to go, again, like Sumant was saying. And even though they didn't know a lot about the education system here, they took it upon themselves to, do some research and basically just figure it out, which is not something that a lot of people have the time or the patience to do.
Right.
I have really young parents. I have a friend who likes to joke that my father is younger than the rapper Jay-Z. I'm not sure if you know who that is or how old that person is. And I think that might be a contributing factor in a way that I had parents that had a lot of energy.
Right. Well, that's actually very interesting what you were saying in terms of how your folks, your parents, did what they had to do in order to learn enough to be able to support you and help you. But I think that the statistics that you mentioned of the going from 1,400 students with 1,200, whatever it was, down to 800, that speaks directly to the fact that not everybody has that kind of support system. And so it sounds to me like what Sumant has been talking about speaks directly to that possibility. So let me ask you this: do you think, in your from in the school that you were in and the people that you knew, if there had been something like this available, that the parents would have embraced it?
I think that at the high school level, it's a little bit different. I think at that time, parents expected their children to be a little bit more independent. I'm not sure that there would be as much involvement at the high school level, but definitely at the middle school level, and especially at the elementary school level, I feel like that this would be, it would have a high attendance.
Got it. Which is exactly what we're talking, K-12.
K-12, yes.
In that early phase, 1, 2, grades K through 8 or 9. I mean, that's really going to be a sweet spot. So Sumant, tell us more about your vision for how to implement this concept.
All right, so one of the important things is, since we'll be catching them young, there's a good chance that the parents will be having 1 or 2 more children, or at least maybe 1 child after. So if we get our program in early and get the parents already coached with 1 child, they're more likely to help the second one.
They'll know what to do.
They'll know what to do. So that takes some pressure off of us. So we can focus on at least just 1 set of students, and then have the parents still, of course, provide all the assistance that the parents need. But at the same time, we will also have our own evaluation methods. So we will make sure that the students definitely stay within that grade, or if not, study and do better. And so that means summer programs will more than likely be as part of the norm for the students to get caught up for the next season coming around the pike.
Good.
So that's.
So, how close are you to actually implementing the plan?
We're expecting to go live with at least about 3 schools in 2 districts for the school year 2015-16.
Wow.
And then go with, do the best practices, put all the systems into place, and then start rolling it out. Basically go nationwide.
Wow.
And informally, just having this conversation with parents, they've already started offering help and saying that we would count us in, and that they're willing to sign the school year contract to be available.
That's
because I
fantastic.
have all these, this is just amongst my own network of friends or meeting friends of friends, and they're saying we are staying at home and we already are college educated, and we would love to do a job which gives us the flexibility that we are there for our children, but at the same time we have a opportunity to give back.
Wow.
And so with the school year contract, it's binding for a year.
Fantastic.
With continuity for that 1 student, which is important.
Cool. That sounds exciting. What do you think of that, Cynthia?
I think it sounds great. I was really happy that I was able to connect with Sumant through another friend, and it's just been really exciting getting to hear about his vision and being able to help out a little bit with filling out some of the plans.
So how does this? I'm actually curious now, because you're in a different arena. You're looking at the school-based health activity. How do you see this tying in what Sumant is looking at, and how does this tie into your activities?
It is 100. It's totally complementary, or they complement each other, is what I mean to say. So in school-based health, for those of you who don't know what a school-based health center is, it's essentially a health clinic on a school campus, and there are over 200. I think now there's 231 school-based health centers across the state of California. We don't have state funding for these clinics in California, but there are other states that do. And basically the idea behind school-based health centers is that healthcare access should be widely available to students, because in order for students to be able to learn, they have to be healthy. So it must be, sorry?
Makes sense, yes.
Yeah, and students often don't have the mobility to be able to access healthcare very easily if it's not very close to them. And I like to compare it best to student health centers on college campuses. And I've asked people, I'm like, how easy is it to just get out of class and hop on over to the student health center and get a sports physical or a sports checkup? And they're like, yeah, it's really convenient. Otherwise, I would have to take a bus and a train and then walk nearly a mile, to see a doctor.
But for kids who are in elementary school, that's not an option.
Exactly. And sometimes that may also not be an option for middle school or high school either, especially when you're looking at rural areas in further north in California and in the Central Valley. Sometimes you might have a school and the nearest primary care physician can be up to 20 or 30 miles away. So you can see how that can be very difficult.
That's interesting. I actually had not thought about that at all. And that's a very interesting thing. And I can see how that ties in, like you said, very nicely to what Sumant is doing. Before we go on to the next thought, I want to mention to the folks who are viewing, if you have any questions for Cynthia, for Sumant, for me about what we're talking about, send them in. Use the email address, info@referencepointtv.com. We'll make sure to get your questions answered. We'll show you how to hook up with these various projects and things like that. So We have less than 10 minutes left in our conversation here. So Sumant, I'm going to ask you directly, how can people help?
Well, we need funding, there's no doubt. And I believe there's funding available for these kind of programs because high school graduation is a big priority. The core curriculum is going into effect. 43 states have already voluntarily the Common Core. And so the Common Core will help us a lot because if the same education is similar across the states, then a parent coach in Texas can help another parent coach somewhere else understand certain concepts. So that actually is going to be awesome that we can directly tap into Common Core going into effect. So the funding is absolutely necessary. And then we're also looking for parent coaches, and they can go to our website and sign up, or at least sign up or offer to be part of it.
And we put your website up there. There's a lot of information on your website. You know, one thing we haven't talked about that I'm actually just came to mind here. My daughter's a 5th grade teacher. Have you had the opportunity to speak to teachers? How are teachers viewing this option?
Without naming names, I've actually spoken to school superintendents and district board members, and they love it. They love to see this come into fruition because we are not interfering with the school system. We're going to be outside, but working between a professional teacher and the parent, and of course the students, and be the outside coach.
Very cool. Very cool.
So we work outside the school system. In fact, Massachusetts had a program for bringing outside help for increasing high school graduation.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Very interesting. Well, cool. So, Cynthia, it sounds like you and Sumant have some synergistic opportunities here that really, because I really can see the combination between those two elements really helping the young people. And, you know, we have right now, one of the things that we talked about at the last show was an article that I had seen in the Wall Street Journal that talked about the difference in the future for types of jobs in America, and how they're moving more away from manual, repetitive type things to creative, cognitive type work where you have to have more foundational education to be able to actually take advantage of what the economy is going to offer us here in the future. So these things that we're talking about now, I think, are imperative. And if we can do this, like you said, Sumant, to break the cycle within a generation, that would be pretty incredible. We have about 5 minutes left in the show. So Cynthia, Sumant, what other things do we want to let the viewing audience know about this concept, about what either of you are doing that we can look at for them to understand and possibly contribute to? Cynthia, you first. Put you on the spot.
I think that definitely, I think the big buzzword of the moment is equity. So I think thinking deeply about what can be done, in the system across the state to improve educational outcomes. California used to have a really good public education system, and we have fallen very, very behind in the past, I think, 25 years or so. So I think thinking about how we can better reach students who are, either low-income youth, foster youth, and English language learners. I think that will be the key to breaking the cycle of poverty and, increasing graduation rates.
Very cool. Sumant?
So we will reach that audience. We absolutely have plans to get to that level, to not just a level. I mean, just a matter of reaching all the students. And just as I'm an immigrant with an accent here, there are so many others with a similar situation.
Right.
I came English trained from India, fortunately, but we will have programs and we'll use best practices. So if there are available resources, we'll make sure that they meet each other, but we'll have a parent coach watching over to make sure it's effective.
Right.
That's important.
I think one of the things that's impressive to me about what it is that we've been talking about for both shows is how inclusive the concept is. Okay, it's not focused on this, this location or this demographic or this age. I mean, it's very inclusive. We identified that there's a root problem here, and that has to do with a parent not having the skill set to be able to do the things that Cynthia's parents actually were able to do. And a lot of parents don't either have that drive or ambition or don't know where to go to be able to do that. So providing this kind of an opportunity is it's going to change not just for the kids, but it's going to change things for the parents too, I would think. Dead silence.
All right. So I'll take that. So because we'll ask the parents also to be stepping out of their comfort zone. So PTAs are very important, the Parent Teacher Association. And I actually talked to one of the district presidents of PTA, and she mentioned that we would love to get more PTAs set up in schools, but we need parents who can step up to the plate because they are the ones who actually have to run the PTA program.
Right.
But if one of them has to be a treasurer and one has to be a president, somebody who's never worked in a corporate setting or has never worked in an office setting, it's hard for them to ask them to step up and become a treasurer or become a president. So with the parent coach help, perhaps we can make those things happen. So we are not the ones only doing the work. The parents will be doing the work, and they'll be stepping outside their comfort zone to actually take interest. And when the students see that, and one of the major reasons, I know we are running out of time now, for students to drop out is, and has been documented, that they see the lack of interest from their parents.
Lack of interest from their parents.
Yes.
Ah.
And it may not be lack of interest, it may be that the parents are not capable of doing something for them, but the students are not old enough or mature enough to understand it's not lack of interest, it's that they're not comfortable doing it.
Or they don't know.
Or they don't know.
Which ties right back into the experience that Cynthia was talking about within her school. Her folks did whatever it took to get there, but a lot of kids may not have had someone who was as motivated or had the energy, right?
Had the energy, yeah.
to be able to make that happen. Yeah. Well, this has been fabulous. We're at a point where we pretty much have to wrap up, but I want to thank both of you for being willing to take the time to have this conversation. And Sumant, I'm excited for what you're doing. I want to stay in touch. I'd like to do a follow-up with you in a few months. You got some targets to be able to get some things executed here in 2015. I'd like to do maybe a follow-up in a couple months to see how things are going with that, because this is really exciting. So thank you, Sumant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Greatly appreciate your putting the time in for this as well. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Again,
thank you. This was fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. We enjoyed having you, for sure.
Thank you, Cynthia.
So don't forget to send in those queries, info@referencepointtv.com. Go up on Sumant's website as well at K12Counts.org and see what you can do to help move this project forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next time on Reference Point.